Hey everybody, my name is Angus Wright, and I also go by Angus by Design. And this is a practice that I do where I read from a book. And in this case, I've been reading Insight Meditation, the Practice of Freedom. That's Mr. Bowie Trigard behind me. So the book is Insight Meditation, the Practice of Freedom by Joseph Goldstein. This book is from 1994, and it's described as the fruit of some 20 years experience leading Buddhist meditation retreats. The book touches on a wide range of topics raised repeatedly by meditators and includes favorite stories, key Buddhist teachings, and answers to the most asked questions. And then Joseph Goldstein is a co-founder of the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, where he is one of the resident guiding teachers. He's also written a bunch of other stuff, but most, what I'd like to say is, if any of what you hear resonates with you, or if you want to learn more about insight meditation, Joseph Goldstein is still going. He's still teaching, and there's lots of resources, even free resources, to hear it from his own voice and to determine it for yourself. And then the other goal is, so I try to do all this within an hour, and then I pull a card from an oracle deck called the Gaia Oracle deck, and it has many different cards reflecting on different areas of life, but then it has an affirmational statement. So none of this is to say what to believe in or what not to believe in. There's no obligation for anybody. This hour, this time, this reading, it starts with me. It's a practice that I have for cultivating mindfulness and for taking an action to practice insight meditation and metta, which is the practice of loving kindness. And it's also an invitation. So I've been a Reiki practitioner and master for since 2007, which soon after that I started to teach other folks. So I've taught guided meditation, energy and body work, that sort of thing. All of that in 2026 boils down to how do we connect our thoughts, the story we tell ourselves, with what's happening actually in our physical brain, which happens in our body, and then how do we kind of tie all that together to have a better outcome for ourselves. So ideally it's for folks who need to manage pain or manage discomfort or what have you, right? So that's what these practices do. So far, we've covered in the book, we've covered what is the path, so the Dharma, fear of enlightenment, intelligence and progress, one taste, four noble truths, signposts, grace or help along the way, the role of a teacher, roads to fulfillment, how to practice, purpose, effort, and surrender, training the heart, meditation instructions, Nintendo Dharma, acceptance, not seeing dukkha is dukkha, understanding pain, feeling good, feeling bad, progress in meditation, spontaneity in practice, coming home, energy and insight, freeing the mind, so hindrances, a dirty cloth, relating to thoughts, views and opinions, judgment 500, conceit and comparing mind, liberating emotions, emotional bondage and emotional freedom. And yesterday I cut off at use your umbrella. So I'm hoping maybe we could finish off this section, which would be fear itself. Thank you, boredom, unworthiness, guilt, jealousy, and desire. So again, these are things that had come up in this author's many years of practice, and then we'll use this to reflect, to sort of see, what did we take in and how does it fit into today. So welcome. The invitation, of course, is to, while we're at it, just sort of get 1% more comfortable if you can. So maybe that's just shifting your weight, maybe it's undoing your jacket, maybe it's laying down, maybe it's sitting. But how can we support ourselves to just be comfortable in the present, right? So fear itself, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first words. I'm gonna make sure Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first words as president to his beleaguered country are the ones for which he is still most remembered. They remain familiar to many of us who were born years after they were spoken. The memorable power of Roosevelt's words lies in his reminding Americans that the most formidable danger was not in the external circumstances of the Great Depression, but rather in the forces of work in their own minds. As meditators, we might pursue this understanding even further. Must we fear fear itself? How much of our creative and vital power is tied up, sometimes even paralyzed, by our fear of fears, our unwillingness to feel it and know it is, or know it for what it is. It would be difficult to overestimate the potential power of fear to control our lives. This mind state has extraordinary range of expression, from mild worry to chronic anxiety to abject terror. It can contract our mind and body and cripple our will. And not only is fear a great power in itself, it also too often provides hidden motive energy to many other states that cause us pain. Behind every act of greed lies fear of deprivation. Behind hatred and aggression lies fear of harm. Behind so much delusion lies fear of knowing and feeling painful conditions. Do you get some sense of why working skillfully with fear can be a significant liberating act? By going beyond our fear of fears and by unmasking fear itself, we not only free ourselves from fear's own debilitating force, but we also reduce the force of many other mental conditions that depend on it as the source of much of their power. Mindfulness practice begins to open up everything. We open our mind to memories, to emotions, to different sensations in the body. In meditation, this happens in a very organic way. Because we are not searching, we are not pulling or probing. We are just sitting and watching in the safe context of a retreat and in their own time, which is the right time. Things start to emerge. The fear of fear, many of those memories, thoughts, emotions, sensations we have been afraid to experience. We begin to allow ourselves to feel it all as these things start to come up, and we feel them consciously and mindfully with a sense of softness and acceptance. Less and less energy is required to hold them down. The energy in our system begins to flow in a much freer way. And then we look around and we notice that there is less fear. We have faced what we feared. We have survived it. We even feel fine. Fear cannot survive the end of avoidance and denial. It begins to lose its domain. The practice helps in another way. Many years ago, I sat a Zen session or meditation retreat with Joshu Sasaki Roshi, a fierce and demanding Zen master. It was an intense session for me in that it touched me in a place of deepest fear. I felt primal fear so strong that I was sometimes even afraid to move. I worked with that fear throughout the session, and although the full intensity of it abated afterward, the deep-rooted feeling of it lasted for months. I was walking around in a space of fear, and I started relating to myself as being a fearful person. I felt the fear like a knot at the core of my being, and I thought I would have to work on it for years in order to untie it. Months later, while a colleague and I were teaching a retreat in Texas, the two of us were walking around the retreat site. I was going on and on about my fear, about everything I had to do, and about what a huge burden it was. She finally turned to me and said something that I myself have said so many times to others. It's only a mind state. That was just the right moment for me to hear those words. Had she said them a week earlier, they might not have had the same impact. But in that exact moment, the reminder opened me to the perspective that the fear truly did not belong to anybody. It was not attachment to or part of an I or me. It was just a mind state. It was there, and it would go away. There was nothing I had to do about it except to let it be. During all that time, even though I had been observing it, in some way I had not been aware that I had felt an aversion toward the fear. Because of that aversion, there was also a negative identification with it. In the moment of actually realizing that fear is just a mind state, the whole thing disappeared. I do not mean that fear never came back to me again, but from that time on, I saw it much more easily. An emotion is like a cloud passing through the sky. Sometimes it is fear or anger. Sometimes it is happiness or love. Sometimes it is compassion. But none of them ultimately constitute a self. They are just what they are, each manifesting its own quality. With this understanding, we can cultivate the emotions that seem helpful and simply let the others be without aversion, without suppression, without identification. Fear, depression, despair, unworthiness, we just watch and we feel. It could take a long time for the process to loosen, or it could be a moment's sudden understanding. Oh, yes, just a mind state. People have worked with these emotions very successfully, although it often takes a lot of patience. Munindraji, one of my first Dharma teachers, used to say that in spiritual practice, time is not a factor. Practice can be measured in time. So let the whole notion of when and how long. Let go of the whole notion of when and how long. The practice is a process unfolding, and it unfolds in its own time. It is like the flowers that grow in the spring. Do you pull them up to make them grow faster? I once tried to do that with the carrots in my first garden when I was 8 years old. It does not work. We do not need any particular length of time for this process of letting things be. Why not do it now? So welcome if you're kind of just joining in. I'm just reading as part of a practice from this book, which is by Joseph Goldstein, and then I'll pull a card. So, and what I like to do is dedicate my practice to whomever comes in. So whether they stay for a split second or whether they go, it's kind of cool. TikTok kind of shows like an insight into how many folks have joined in. So by the end of the process, I just kind of look and dedicate the practice to everyone. So thank you. Boredom, like anger and other emotions, boredom often fools us into diverting our energies entirely to an external situation. Thus, it keeps us from liberating ourselves by seeing our relationship to the emotion itself. We make a great mistake about boredom when we think that it comes because of a particular person or situation or activity. So much of the restlessness in our meditation practice and in our daily lives derives from this fundamental misunderstanding. How often do we try to find something new to recapture our interest, something more stimulating or more exciting? And how often does that too quickly become boring and dull, so that we range off again looking for yet another something better? to realize that boredom does not come from the object of our attention, but rather from the quality of our attention, is truly a transforming insight. Fritz Perls, one of those who brought Gestalt, their therapy to America, said boredom is a lack of attention. Understanding this reality brings profound changes in our lives. Then boredom becomes a tremendously useful feedback for us. It is telling us not that the situation or person or meditation object is somehow lacking, but rather that our attention at that time is half-hearted. Instead of wallowing in boredom or complaining about it, we can see it as a friend saying to us, pay more attention, get closer, listen more carefully. The next time you feel a lack of interest, instead of simply drowning in boredom, use it as a signal to bring your attention very close. In doing that, you will see how acuity of attention brings interest and energy. Marcel Marceau, the wonderful French mime, does an act in which he goes from standing to either sitting or lying down. He changes his position completely, but you never see him stir. And his increments of movement are so small that you never see any movement. Now he is standing, now he is sitting. Try doing that, moving as slowly as possible, and see if you are bored. Impossible. Precisely because it demands such close attention. When we are with people and feeling bored, can we listen a little more carefully, stepping off the train of our own inner commenting? If we are sitting in meditation and feeling uninterested, can we come in closer to the object, not with force, but with gentleness and care? What is this experience we call the breath? If someone were holding your head underwater, would the breath be boring? Each breath is actually sustaining our life. Can we be with it fully just once? When we recognize what boredom is, it becomes a great call to awaken. So, again, just reading from Joseph Goldstein's book, Insight Meditation, The Practice of Freedom. I really dig this page. I think it's pretty funky, relating to dragons, I think. Yeah, so this is the Shambhala Dragon editions. Says the dragon is an age-old symbol of the highest spiritual essence, embodying wisdom, strength, and the divine power of transformation. In this spirit, Shambhala Dragon Editions offers a treasury of readings in the sacred knowledge of Asia. In presenting the works of authors, both ancient and modern, we seek to make these teachings accessible to lovers of wisdom everywhere. And so far I've been reading for about 24 minutes. We've had about 45 folks come through, which is great. Yeah, we'll keep going. We're going to cover unworthiness and guilt and hopefully jealousy and desire after I drink. All right. So unworthiness. Traditionally, we begin meditation retreats by taking refuge. This act has deep meaning. We take refuge in Buddha, in Dharma, and in Sangha, in the awakened mind, in the path to awakening, and in the community of all those on that path. People may take refuge as a ritual or kind of ceremony. It does not function on that level, but it also has a much deeper and more immediate meaning for us. To come to the end of suffering, the way out is through. Though what Buddha called the heart's or the sure heart's release is the certain result of our practice if we persevere. And though at times we enjoy tastes of this wonderful blessing along the way, nonetheless, much of our practice involves uncovering the closed and uncomfortable places of the heart. Freedom comes from creating a mind so spacious and clear that those places of contraction begin to dissolve because we remove our resistances to them. At times, this healing, liberating process can be challenging because those uncomfortable places are uncomfortable. Taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha draws to our aid very powerful liberating forces that help buoy us up through the inevitable times of challenge and travail. We are not on this path alone. One of those difficult places, a corrosive, destructive power in our consciousness, affects us in the West particularly. I refer to the mind state or emotion of unworthiness, self-hatred. How can taking refuge help us with this particularly harmful mental habit? When we are full of anxiety, self-doubt, and feelings of unworthiness, taking refuge in Buddha helps bring us back to that place in ourselves where we acknowledge our own essential Buddha nature. Even though we may have all these difficult emotions by taking refuge in Buddha, we take refuge both in our own potential for enlightenment and in the wisdom of the historical Buddha. And then from that deep place of refuge, we have the power to see the self-rejection and anxiety, not as things inherent in our makeup, but rather as passing forces in our mind. Once, when the Dalai Lama was visiting our meditation center in Barre, Massachusetts, and I questioned him, someone described deep feelings of unworthiness and self-doubt. The Dalai Lama gave a beautiful response. In my experience, he always embodies and radiates an amazing amount of compassion. You palpably feel that quality coming out of him. And in that moment, it was very strong. I could feel a wave of his love for this person who felt so unworthy. The Dalai Lama said, "You are wrong, you are absolutely wrong." It was a powerful moment because it gently but forcefully cut through the investment we make. The identification we have with these mind states as being who we are. This wonderful teacher knew very well, just as we all know somewhere deep within us, that underneath the doubt, the anxiety, and the fear, the essential nature of our mind and heart is pure. We may be visited by various hindrances and defilements that color our mind for some time, but they are only visitors. They do not own the house. No matter what we have done in the past, no matter what has been done to us, no matter what our present life and present lives have been, we all share the great potential of wisdom and compassion. Our life is the process of the Dharma unfolding, and we simply need to open ourselves to understanding it, to realizing the truth of what is really there. So it is important not to be misled by feelings like anxiety, self doubt, and unworthiness. We do not deny them or pretend they are not there, because they are there and they do influence our mind in a certain way. But we do not need to give them an import they do not have. Taking refuge, as the Dalai Lama so warmly suggested once, rest your head in the lap of the Buddha. Settle into Buddha nature, right here into the nature of the Dharma, into the awareness of the Sangha, those many beings who have walked the path of awakening. Refuge is a place of safety, and this understanding of our own inherent worthiness becomes a sanctuary of safety within us. It's good to have you guys here. If you're just joining or wondering what the heck I'm up to, this is just a practice where I read from a book. I've done a couple of books so far, but right now I'm reading Insight Meditation, The Practice of Freedom with Joseph Goldstein. I do it within an hour. Like, I try to keep the practice under an hour so I can repost it here, and I repost it on YouTube as well. And then I pull a card for inspiration, and the whole thing is just a practice for everybody to just cultivate mindfulness in a way that's meaningful to them. So guilt, a close colleague of unworthiness, walking hand in hand with it through our heart and mind, is guilt. This mind state or emotion often intrudes into situations where we may have done or said unskillful things that caused suffering to ourselves or to others. It is important to know that we actually have a choice about how we treat each situation. The customary response is to condemn ourselves, to have that feeling of I'm so bad. But this state of harsh self-judgment is really a trick of the ego. The mind or the ego tricks us into solidifying a sense of self, of I, in a negative judgment. This sense of self is not a solid, continuous structure in the mind that we have to get rid of. We create a sense of self anew in each moment when we are not mindful, when we are identifying with whatever's happening. So in every moment of awareness, wisdom frees us from the contraction of self, because ego delusion is as discontinuous and impermanent as everything else. The wisdom of mindfulness and the delusion of selfhood cannot coexist at the same time. The one drives out the other. As guilt arises in our mind, it is fed when we identify with it and make it self, when we fail to notice it with awareness. So when guilt comes out, make that the object of your awareness. Note it. In the moment of recognition, acceptance, and non-identification, this is difficult, and it may take some time to master. You can see what a flimsy paper tiger this fierce mental force really is. Guilt arises, you note it, and in that moment of noting, when you no longer identify with it, it falls away. In contrast to guilt, there's another possible response to our unskillful actions. We might think of this response as wise remorse. We acknowledge and accept that we have done something unskillful. We understand its unwholesomeness. We see that it bears certain fruits. And with wisdom, we let out our acknowledgement, be the force for restraining such actions in the future. Thus, we avoid that slippery inverse trick of aggrandizing ego or aggrandizing through negative stress on self. We feel wise remorse in a mental environment of forgiveness, because forgiveness recognizes the truth of change. What happened in the past does not have to happen in the future. There is no forgiveness in guilt because we have congealed the sense of self into a kind of unchanging stasis through negative self-judgment. According to guilt, once bad, always bad. One time when I was in retreat, guilt came up very strongly and unpleasantly about a particular thing I had done. It came so incessantly that I drew closer to it, very interested in understanding how I was so enmeshed in it. Okay, what's going on here? What is this? What is this suffering about? Finally, I saw that the guilt I felt was really just a ruse of the ego, which had tricked me into creating a sense of I. So here was the work of Mara. Mara in Buddhism is the symbolic personification of ignorance and delusion, all those thoughts and impulses that try to draw us away from liberation. When the Buddha to be was making his last great effort for enlightenment, it was Mara who attacked him under the Bodhi tree and tried to break his concentration. When I recognized that guilt is the work of Mara, I developed a new technique of practice I call wagging the finger at Mara, just the Buddha described, or just as the Buddha described in discourses about how he would exclaim, "Mara, I see you." I wagged my mental finger at Mara. "I see you." By that wag of the finger, the identification and deception disappeared, and the guilt that I had been experiencing quickly dissolved. Then arose that feeling of genuine and wise remorse. Wise remorse freed me from being stuck, mired in the sense of I'm so bad. Through it, I understood that the particular action that had gripped my memory was unskillful, that I could make the effort not to do it again, and that I could move on. Try this wagging the finger meditation next time guilt visits your heart. Oh, you shouldn't feel, or oh, you should feel bad about this, or you did something really bad and you are really bad. Do you accept that approach? Do you take it? Do you claim it as I? If you do, Mara has won. But if you see the trick and wag your finger, Mara, I see you, then thoughts of guilt may come, but you do not empower them with identification. And there's room for more genuine feelings of remorse. you did something unskillful. You do not deny it, you open to it, you see it, you learn from it. And then, with a sense of forgiveness, you understand that it was impermanent. In such a moment, you may feel that crucial mental shift from a place of tight ego involvement to one of those great, or to one of great spaciousness, and you may delight in the fact that that indeed you have a choice. And jealousy. So jealousy can be a consuming fire in the mind, a state of great suffering, the starting place for working with it, a place that many people neglect, is seeing it, recognizing it, and feeling it without condemnation or judgment. Condemning or judging only feeds it. If we condemn ourselves for being jealous, we simply strengthen a feeling of not being good enough. We become even more tied up in the painful, fiery knot, and we find it very difficult to cut ourselves free. So, the first step is not to struggle with the fact that jealousy is arising, to make a space of acceptance. From that place, we can then apply the interest of investigation. We ask ourselves, what is this? What is the nature of this emotion? By investigating the quality of this energy in the heart and mind, by feeling the sensations of it in the body, we extricate ourselves from entrapment in the content level. If you find yourself locked into the feeling of jealousy for long periods of time, it may be necessary to drop down below it to seek some underlying feeling. The feeling of unworthiness or absence of metta, loving kindness for yourself, may be working in tandem with jealousy. If you do not see and acknowledge these dangerous allies, if you are not mindful of them, then they will keep fueling the jealousy. So even though it is a very fiery state, jealousy is quite workable. But in order to deal with it skillfully, you will need a lot of spaciousness, a lot of acceptance. Touch it, get underneath it, and through understanding, overcome it. And I should have time for the last part, which is desire. And it's from Joseph Goldstein's Insight Meditation book from 1994 in the Practice of Freedom. So we live in a world where we naturally encounter a wide assortment of appealing senses, sense objects, sights and sounds, tastes, sensations, interesting thoughts and ideas. Desire arises from contact with these pleasing objects, and this desire can range from obsessive passion to addictive craving to a simple passing wish for something. All of these gradations of feeling are the expressions of the wanting mind. It is important to distinguish here between the desire of wanting associated with greed and the desire of motivation, which can be joined with either wholesome or unwholesome factors. In English, we use the same word for these very different states of mind, whereas in Pali, the language spoken by the Buddha, different words distinguish the various meanings of desire. Let's see here. So in Pali, the word tana means the desire of craving, and the word shanda is translated as desire to do. For example, the Buddha, before his enlightenment, had a strong desire for liberation that inspired him over countless lifetimes of practice. This was shanda, the energy of motivation to accomplish something. In this case, associated with faith, wisdom, and compassion. The grasping force of Tana runs very deep in our consciousness. In fact, the Buddha said that this kind of desire or craving is the driving force of samsara. This entire round of existence, of life and death, desire, wanting, craving, clinging are all expressions of the greed factor in the mind. We feel it as thirst for a particular object. We become entranced by the appearance and seduced by the pleasant feelings that accompanies it. At that time, we cannot clearly see the true nature of phenomena, their impermanence and selflessness. Observe carefully what happens to your own mind when it becomes entranced in the forest of desire. It is like being lost in the enchanted maze or wrapped in a delusive dream world. We weave many thoughts and fantasies around the experience we either are having or want to have. And we bind ourselves in the chains of attachment. So, strong desire in our mind not only obscures clear understanding, but it also fails finally to deliver the happiness it promises. We seek out different sense pleasures for the pleasant feelings they bring. But these feelings are so impermanent that we need to look continually for another and another. How many pleasant feelings have we already enjoyed? Too many to even count. And yet we feel as if something is lacking, something is not complete. Without understanding how or why, we stay on the treadmill, endlessly looking for yet another pleasant experience. It is hardest to cure a disease when the medicine we take itself causes the disease. We scratch the itch, and the scratching only makes it worse. We try to quench our thirst by drinking salt water, and we make ourselves thirstier. This is what happens when we believe that the only way to end desires is to fulfill them. A different and liberating insight dawns when we begin to pay careful attention to the powerful energy in our lives. So first we need to make a desire the very object of our attention so that we are fully aware when it arises in our mind. In this way, we are no longer simply lost in the feelings or thoughts, but instead we see clearly what is going on. Then we can investigate what the power of renunciation means. For many people, the word renunciation conjures up images of hermits in caves or unbearable ascetic disciplines. Or we might consider renunciation as something that is probably good for us, but indefinitely burdensome. It is said that St. Augustine offered up this prayer: Dear God, make me chaste, but not yet. But it is possible to understand renunciation in a way that resonates more deeply within us. We can begin to see that addiction is the burden, and that not buying into it is the freedom. Imagine yourself watching television with endless commercials and desiring everything you see. That would be a state of tremendous suffering compared with the peace of just letting them all pass by. To let go of the commercials on TV is easy. Letting go of the endless commercials in our mind is more difficult. So one of the great gifts of a meditation retreat can give us is the opportunity to learn about the impermanent nature of desire, whether it is sexual desire, desire for food, the desire to see or hear something, or whatever. Because desire frequently overcomes us, we often feel that the only way to deal with it is to gratify it in some way. So we may have the idea that if we do not fulfill the desire, it will be with us until we do. So yet if we have enough strength of mind just to be with it, to be mindful, we see that it goes away by itself. So what happens in meditation when we choose not to act on desire? We watch it, and at a certain point it is gone. Although the desire may be back when conditions reform in the moment of its leaving, it is really gone. So desire is impermanent like everything else. This simple but hard to win insight is tremendously freeing, because we begin to understand that we do not necessarily have to satisfy desires every time they dangle their bait. We see that desires do not have to be fulfilled in order to be resolved. Eventually, they all leave by themselves, because they too are part of the great wheel of change. Pay special attention to the very moments of transition when desire leaves and cool, non-wanting flows into its place. Feel that sense of release, of escaping the grip of craving in the mind. Watching that experience of being filled with with a very compelling and strong desire, and then seeing, knowing, and feeling what happens as it vanishes by itself, relieves us of the tremendous burden of having necessarily to do anything about it. The mind washes free with a great sense of relief and spaciousness. As we become more familiar with this place of freedom in the mind, we are no longer compulsively driven by the force of desire to act. We can then bring love and wisdom to bear on the choices we make. Is this desire appropriate? Is it skillful? Is this the time? We can either act on it or not, and the mind stays in balance and in peace. Learning to be adept in our relationship to desire, the driving force of this whole samsara, is not an easy task. So be patient with yourself and persevere in the exploration. And so next, I'll be going into psychology and dharma. It's like part 4 of the book, so we'll get started on that tomorrow. And I have a few minutes. So what I do is I like to pull a card, and what it does is it just gives, I like to do it as like a way of just comparing. During this time, there was 121 people passed through and 126 hearts. So what I like to do is I like to just kind of reflect on everything we saw or heard, or what I read, looking at those things that we can get hooked by or that can sort of trap us, I guess, like jealousy, desire, guilt. Those things can be very addictive, right? They can be huge motivators for us to do the wrong thing or to accept the wrong thing, right? I think everybody deserves peace and care and safety and access and autonomy, right? Everybody deserves to be who they are. It doesn't matter what they look like. So here's the card I pulled. Ooh, it's all about perception. So perception beyond the veil of illusion. So that's card 39. So what I'll do is I'll read what the book says, and then again it's just a reflective tool, right? Tying in, and then there's an affirmation. So the lady, let's see here. Burp. Let's see. Okay. So so perception beyond the veil of illusion. The lady featured on this card looks directly at the observer. She radiates love and wisdom, yet stands firmly in her own truth. From this standpoint, she is able to see beyond the veil of illusion. She is shown up in your reading today to reflect these same qualities within you. You are advised to stand your own ground with regards to a particular person or issue. Stand within your own truth and don't be swayed by another's beliefs, opinions, or views. If it doesn't feel right, then it's not. Trust your intuition and gut feeling on this one. Be true to yourself. You can respect another's views without having to change your value system. If it doesn't align with your values, then don't take it on. The affirmation here is, I honor another's truth, but stand firm within my own. I am comfortable with who I am. I keep an open heart and mind. I empower myself when I honor my values. In being true to me, I am also true to others. All right. Well, that was awesome. Just a couple more minutes. So anybody who had joined us, anybody who passed through, if you're listening to this wherever you hear it, these are things that I'll repost to YouTube. I listen to them, part of doing it in my own voice, part of choosing material like Joseph Goldstein, Ram Dass, these sort of academic people, is that I trust what they're saying. I think we live in a world where there's so much hustle and bustle. There's so much danger, really. So many scams, and there's so many ways to just get hooked by things that I like to have tools within those areas that I can feel safe about and sort of get lost into or to use as guides. And so part of this practice is literally just providing an opportunity for others to benefit in the same way that I feel that I have. So I'm Angus by design across all the platforms. I'm Angus Wright. I live in Ottawa. That's my dog Bo. I'm turning 50 in a month. I've lived here for 30 years in a month, and I'm just really proud to still be here. And so it was great. Thanks everybody. Looking forward to seeing you next time.